Right, we back in here. A return for Chelsea Football Club to UCL Knights once again. Match week 2, this time at home to Benfica and one Jose Mourinho. Now, what do Chelsea need to do in order to secure the 3 points that have evaded them in the past few weeks in the league, as well as the first night of the Champions League? Well, I think for one, as we've all seen, it would be nice to finish a full 90 minutes with 11 men on the pitch. That would be very helpful. I saw a stat where of the past 5 losses that Chelsea have had, that includes like the Club World Cup and the end of last season, the matches that Chelsea have lost, 4 out of the 5 of them, is because mainly due to Chelsea not finishing the match with its full complement of players. So to start with, that would be very nice. As an aside, I saw a clip again of that Malo Gusto, like Ronaldo chop he did when he was on the break after he was subbed on against Brighton. And it's tough because I wish he would have just went and tried to create a chance for himself. I know he's on the ball, so he's going to be slowed down a little bit. But a ball that's played into space by Enzo, I believe it was, and you being down 10 men, as small of a chance as it was, cutting back in that situation, I would have rather him try to knock the ball on and then lose it, trying to make something happen, as opposed to what he did, which was cut back and retain possession and ultimately lead to nothing because the numbers weren't there going forward to try to create a chance. But alas, I guess it wasn't to be. Back to this match. Obviously, it's a little emotional with another return for Jose Mourinho. He's had a few comments, obviously, surrounding his return to the club and the emotions that come of it for him. He's in a new job against a team that we actually saw Chelsea play recently over the summer. And so I think whatever we see from Benfica in this match will probably be a lot different than what we saw under Bruno Lage in this Lage in the summer, in the Club World Cup, in which was almost a horror match for Chelsea. I remember watching that match and just being completely dumbfounded by the circumstances. Obviously, a crazy free kick from Reece James in that match to go 1-0 up. Then that lightning delay that I can't even remember how long it spanned, but coming back, Benfica still the momentum. Di Maria scores a penalty to make it 1-1, and then it goes into extra time. And then eventually, thankfully, Chelsea then run away from it. We saw that goal from Christopher Nkunku, probably his biggest contribution for the club in his time at Chelsea. And then I think Dewsbury Hall might have scored maybe one other goal. I think Pedro Neto, I believe, on the break. And ultimately securing the victory 4-1. This match, especially considering the circumstances surrounding Chelsea's recent form, their injuries, I would expect this to be a much tougher match even than that one, just because of what's been going on with the club in recent weeks. This was never a match for Chelsea to overlook, and now it's even more imperative to put on a good performance, ultimately secure the 3 points. It's, Liverpool coming up at the weekend and not playing up to the standard in the past 2 matches, going down a man, obviously playing a part in that. There's no excuse not to secure anything other than 3 points. Transitioning into team news, we saw like in the past couple days that there were reports or rumors, I guess, circulating a little bit about the manager Enzo Maresca's job security. Honestly, I think that's just a little bit of grifting from that reporter. I'm blanking on his name right now, but grifting, I guess, is the wrong word. Maybe it's legitimate reporting. Who knows? Him saying, "Oh, he retains the club's full support and backing moving forward, and no concerns over this slump that has befallen Chelsea over the past couple weeks." To me, that sort of reporting kind of is reserved for managers really under pressure and nearing a sacking. Case in point, or Exhibit A being Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, for example, or Eric Ten Hag for them as well. And so I just think that report is a bit of nonsense, if I'm being honest. As for the match itself, well, let me just say I'm completely Maresca in. I don't really have any doubts at this point about him at all. He mentioned that he could stand to learn a few things from those two matches against Brighton and Manchester United, where his side fell a man down, and he could have adjusted better. And hopefully, we see that in the future. If it happens, I hope that never happens ever again. Obviously, it's impossible to predict what will and can happen, but I hope he never has to experience going down 10 men again, and he never has to show what he's learned. In any case, back to the match itself. Some injury news again, obviously. At the weekend, we saw Benoit Badiashile and Romeo Lavia return to the squad on a positive note, being subbed on in the second half of that Brighton match. But it looks like Andrey Santos, Moises Caicedo, and Joao Pedro bring up with small problems and will be assessed before the match to see if they are fit to play. I would imagine that they are. We may see Andrey Santos, I would imagine, if anybody, not being risked for the match because he can come off the bench and cover for both Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo. I'll get into the team 11, what I think and prefer to happen in that match. But yeah, no Cole Palmer, no Tosin, obviously, through the international break. And we know about the long-term injuries. So it's been a really rough period for the club, and hopefully they're able to turn around. What I want to see from the match itself, tactic-wise, I thought they were very, the side was very bright against Brighton in that match, going 1-0 up and looking largely comfortable. We saw a couple tactical tweaks in which it was almost like a 2 at the back instead of a 3 in possession. And then we saw the fullbacks, Reece James and Marco Correa, back in to midfield to help Moises Caicedo and, progress the ball forward. It allowed freedom for Andrey Santos and Enzo Fernandez in behind the front line and the midfield as well to find space in places that would allow them to push on forward and progress the ball and create chances for themselves and for others. And so I think what we would have saw in that match, had there not been a red card, was, I would imagine, a comfortable victory and a tactical tweak that really would have helped. Because I said that in the match review that when I mentioned that tactical tweak that we saw, obviously I'm a novice, this is just what I'm seeing with my own eyes, but what we saw in that tweak was in response to a lot of teams who were conceding possession, playing their forwards very narrow, and even man-marking Moises Caicedo, not allowing passes into him, and as a result, not allowing passes to play through the middle of the pitch. And what it did was it caused a few problems. One being that the center backs having to play through the lines and pass the ball beyond multiple lines into midfield and into Joao Pedro if he's checking for the ball. In order for him to hold it up, it made, especially, and then even when opposition's teams pressed high, making them go long, and Joao Pedro not being a physical striker per se, losing out on those physical battles and relying on Chelsea to secure second balls when they fell to them. And so it's not as foolproof, obviously. It's not as reliable of a plan, especially when, as I said, you don't have a physical striker like Joao Pedro, who is strong in a way that, say, a Nicholas Jackson, I think, was probably a bit better in doing that for Chelsea. So that tactical tweak, allowing Chelsea to not just have to play through Moises Caicedo, and then making those attacking midfielders, Enzo Fernandez in this example, having him drop too far deep in order to collect the ball and move it forward. So I would imagine we see something similar to that against somebody like Jose Mourinho, who's known for his defensive style. He made his legend, I guess, through that fast counter-attacking style. And so I would imagine him being away from home against a team he's relatively new to, they concede possession a little bit and look to hit Chelsea quick on the counter. And so hopefully, as I said, the expectation is 3 points. And at 3 points is really needed considering Liverpool at the weekend going into the national break with one win. That being against Lincoln City would not be good for morale or for Chelsea's prospects really for the rest of the season. Uh, Obviously, I think Chelsea are still in line to qualify for the Champions League knockouts. I don't think a loss here would by any stretch leave them out of it, but you want to see a turnaround with the players that are available to Enzo Maresca. On to what I believe will be the starting 11, what I would see as the starting 11 in this match. I'm going to go with Rob Sanchez keeping his place in goal. I've mentioned previously, Philip Jorgensen, I think, played himself out of contention for competing with Rob Sanchez for that number one goalkeeping position. I think there would have been a slight chance that Philip Jorgensen started in this match had he not put up a stinker against Lincoln City in his lone appearance for the season. And so I think Rob Sanchez retains his place. Right back and left back, Marco Correa and Reece James, I imagine, keep them their place as well. Reece James being the one point of contention. Maybe we see Malo Gusto play at right back, considering the fact that a couple days later we see Liverpool at the weekend. So maybe there's a bit of rotation there. As for the center back positions, I think that Trevor Chalobah will start in this match, mainly because he's not going to be available for Liverpool, and Josh Achampong and Benoit Badiashile weren't fully fit to start at the weekend due to illness, and then Badiashile just returning from a long injury. And so I think Trevor Chalobah will start in that match, and then I think it'll be, I imagine, Wesley Fofana. Although I could see a scenario where it is Benoit Badiashile and Trevor Chalobah, if I had to guess. But what I'm going to go with is a Wesley Fofana and Trevor Chalobah partnership at the back. In midfield, I think we see Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo along with Andrey Santos, although I did mention previously he may off the bench considering he's not fully fit, and Moises Caicedo has a bit of a, well, I think one of them may not start, but in terms of my first choice, that's what I believe will happen. On the left, I think Garnacho will come back into the side, into the starting 11, and I would like to see Estevao on the right again, with Pedro Neto being rested for the midweek match to be available for Liverpool, and then Joao Pedro as the 9. The reason I have it this way, I want to see Estevao a full 90 minutes just to see what he can do over the course of 90. He hasn't had the chance to do that. He hasn't completed a full 90 minutes in a competitive match for Chelsea yet. And I think there is a lot of meat on the bone in terms of his ability on the ball and his ability to create chances. Every time he's on the pitch, he's looked bright and positive. He, against Brighton, before he was subbed off, he's had a couple chances going into the box, maybe made the wrong decision. He rinsed their left back a couple times, nutmegged him at one point. He had that assist against West Ham. He could have had a couple goals already to begin the season, and so I think continuing to persist with him as the starter, whether it is as the 10 or on the right wing, is the course of action and the way to go moving forward, even when Cole Palmer inevitably returns from injury. Just because I think him gaining that momentum on the pitch will side tremendously. Point of contention with the starting 11. I don't think Jamie Gittins sees the starting 11 at this point. He hasn't started the season well, so I just don't think that will happen. If anybody come in for Garnacho, it will be Neto. I don't think that'll happen. I think Garnacho gets the start here. Neto at the weekend against Liverpool, and we will get to that when we get to that. In any case, as for what I think will happen in this match, them being at home and the positivity that I think the team showed against Brighton and would have showed against Manchester United had Rob Sanchez not had a bozo moment. I think actually, although in terms of results, them not being the best, the performances themselves, I think would have shown a different tale before um, that gift giving that Chelsea has done over the past couple of matches. So I think it'll end up being a 3-1 victory, is what I'm going to predict. Goals from Stevao. I think he finally gets a goal. Predicted that last match. Unfortunately, did not happen. But I think he finally gets a goal. I would imagine Joao Pedro gets a goal. I think he scores a brace. So that's what I think will happen in this match. Hopefully, I come away with a match review with a more positive note than I have in the past couple match reviews. And it will lead into a momentum shift and hopefully a victory against Liverpool at the weekend when we see them visit Stamford Bridge. In any case, if you've watched the video, I appreciate it, and I will see you after the match.